I am going to reconvene the Committee on Public Safety, Finance, and Policy. We are continuing with our discussion of House File 100. Where we left off, we have another amendment, and I believe that that is the A58 amendment. Who will be offering that? Representative Whitty.
Thank you, Chair Mueller. Thank you, Representative Stephenson. The 858 amendment replaces the existing appropriation in the bill for peace officer drug recognition training with amount closer to what is needed if the bill becomes law. Minnesota currently has about 250 drug recognition experts. With the legalization of recreational marijuana, an additional 250 drug recognition experts will be needed. Drug recognition training for peace officers is highly specialized and a lengthy process. Initial cost for additional 250 drug recognition experts will be about $8 million to cover training, per diem, attendee, and backfill salary, and instructor and certification cost. In addition, there is a continuing education requirement for drug recognition experts. The cost will be approximately $2 million. There will be ongoing costs for continuing education and training new drug recognition experts due to attrition and retirements. Unlike alcohol, where we have roadside breath tests that measure a person's blood alcohol content, we don't have reliable roadside tests for THC, so we need to rely on expertly trained peace officers who can recognize when a person is driving under the impairment of drugs. Since Colorado became one of the first states to legalize recreational marijuana in 2012, citations for impaired driving in which marijuana was perceived as being at least one of the substances involved increased by 120% from 2014 to 2020. And that's according to a report from the Colorado Department of Public Safety. When I was a police officer, I share this story. My first call as a public information officer was at 10 a.m. A mom and her 4 kids, she was pushing them along in a stroller. A car came across and hit them. And he was under influence of drugs. And I remember talking about, the crime, but also the issue of being under the influence and driving. And then the last thing I told them was, I would recommend everyone going home and hugging their families because that's what I was planning on doing. I ask for your support for this important increase to the funding level in the bill. I know our local police departments and sheriff's offices don't have the funding for the training or the resources needed to keep our communities safe. I appreciate your vote of yes on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Stephenson.
Madam Chair, Representative Whitty, so I agree with you that the current appropriations in the bill are not sufficient for this, but I'm going to ask you to either withdraw or I would ask for a no vote either way because we don't yet have the fiscal note for the bill yet. It's very important to me that we have a bill that is self-supporting, that the tax revenue is sufficient to cover the appropriations. And so I have been, not just on your amendment here, but any amendment that spends money, I've been asking people to hold off until we kind of have the big picture. And then we'll do that. So I will tell you that I will commit to you that we'll do more than the $500,000 that's in the bill. Currently, I don't know about these exact dollar amounts, more or less. I'm just saying I'm not going to make a specific commitment, but we're not there yet. I think that we've been on the verge of a fiscal note for about a week and a half now, so hopefully will not be too long. But I'd ask you to consider withdrawing, and then I'm happy to work with you to get this money in. And if not, I just ask for a no vote.
Representative Novotny.
Just before we close it.
Oh, go ahead. Representative Whitty.
I appreciate you looking into that. And like I said, public safety is the main focus in my concern on this one. So I will work with you and I'll pull back the amendment.
All right. So the A58 amendment has been withdrawn. We'll move now to member discussion. I'm going to give us 10 minutes for member discussion. Who would like to go first? Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And our presence in
Room 5 notwithstanding, I'd just like to tip my hat to yourself and to Representative Tapke for keeping the car running on the track today. We had a lot to cover and got through a lot of testimony. There were, unfortunately, however, a couple of folks, probably more than a couple of folks who would have liked to testify who weren't able to. And just to shout out to a couple of them, there was the Smart Approaches to Marijuana and the Minnesota Trucking Association, and their concerns were particular to the jurisdiction of our committee here in public safety. And the one thing I'll note, and I'll just cut my remarks short given the time. I've been here not very long, but this is the biggest bill I've ever seen. This is an absolutely massive piece of legislation, and I think it stands as a testament. Yeah.
There's more.
I think that it stands as a testament to how heavy of a lift you're doing with this legislation, and I commend you for that ambition, but I think that it also ends up lending itself towards being kind of awkward and haphazard in terms of its overall effect, and that's reflected in the number of people and the diversity of concerns that have been expressed both in this committee and in others. My constituents aren't supportive of this, and so I'm going to be a no vote. But I'll just note that I really appreciate your demeanor and your disposition and your approach to this process. You've been very receptive in terms of ideas, in spite of advising us to not go ahead with amendments and what have you. You're willing to have those conversations, and I hope that that will continue. I'm confident that it will. And that's it. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And I'll just note, too, for the record, for those who didn't get to testify, we do apologize for that. As you know, we had many, many people sign up, and we still, if they didn't get a chance to submit a letter yet, we will still take that testimony and post that on our website and provide it via email to our members, so anybody can feel free to do that. Other member discussion. Representative Hollins.
Thank you, Chair Mueller, and thank you, Representative Stephenson. This is a big bill, and it's a big bill because it impacts a lot of different pieces of our law, and because it's really important. It's important that we get it right. And I know that this bill predates my time at this in this building, and that it's had many hands touching it. I think that one thing we have to recognize is when we do something big like this, it typically means not everybody's going to be happy, right? Like, there are parts of this that I'm not satisfied with, and I'm sure there are parts of it that your constituents are not satisfied with. But the reality is the system that we have currently isn't working. People are still using cannabis. They are still driving while on cannabis. They are procuring it from unreliable sources and individuals who there's no regulation of this substance. And so I think, given that we have been fighting this drug war since the 1980s, it's really important that we start thinking about things in a different way, because the war on drugs failed. Like, that is 100% true. It did not work the way we wanted it to. And so now we really need to rethink a lot of what we have in statute, and we have to rethink about how this has disproportionately impacted certain groups of people. And I know I sound like a broken record when I talk about that, but it is true. It's disproportionately, yeah. Representative Novotny's nodding. I do sound like a broken record. I understand that. But we have to recognize that this does disproportionately impact certain groups of people, and we've heard that from testifiers today. And so while I am not totally satisfied with this, I think that it is absolutely the right step to take. It's the right move. And frankly, Minnesotans have been waiting for it for a really long time. So I appreciate your work on this. I appreciate your willingness to continue working with us, like both sides of the aisle, all the stakeholders involved, because I think it's important.
Further member discussion? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair.
Go ahead. Representative Curran.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief here. So this came up in our community maybe about a month or so ago, talking about the safety of legalizing adult use cannabis. And it was really helpful for my community to hear a few things, especially when we're talking about safety on the roads. So I just wanted to point out that there are a variety of ways that different substances affect the human body. And we know that alcohol is very, very unique in that way, in that we can use horizontal gaze nystagmus tests to, track the movement of the eyes, and that's something that happens to the body there's nothing you can do to control what happens. It's the alcohol that controls that movement in your eyes when you're at a certain level of impairment. And we don't have that for marijuana. We also don't have that for prescription medications that people abuse. We don't have that for Ambien. We don't have that for anything else. So, you know, what we do rely on, and I'm glad that Representative Whitty brought this up, is DREs. And so I would agree that we need to make sure we have solid drug recognition experts in the field, because they're already using visual and behavioral cues to interpret the levels of an impairment. And that is relatively accurate and effective. So I think we can lean on law enforcement to be drug recognition experts for that. And we also know that cannabis is a widely used medication now. And so we can't just say, if it's in your body, you're guilty of something. And to me, that gets into the territory of criminalizing being on some type of prescription drug, and that's a whole other issue. But I just wanted to bring attention to the testing for current levels of impairment. There are ways to do that, but it's not really effective to compare it to alcohol consumption because it affects the body in such different ways and affects everybody differently. And the other thing I just wanted to bring up is that the legalization of cannabis will help a huge public safety issue that we have going on right now, which is fentanyl. And I hear a lot from community members about kids getting illegal weed off the streets and it's laced with fentanyl, and regulation fixes that. Regulation moves us entirely away from a market that has these substances that can kill people. So I just want to make sure we talked about those two pieces about cannabis and public safety. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Chair Moeller. I was struck at the different people I find myself agreeing with in this committee, and today I find myself in agreement at least on a couple points with the marijuana legalization now party. That testifier brought up the fact that there'll be a black market. People, as Representative Hollins said, right now they're procuring from unregulated markets, and that's going to continue. We only have to look at Colorado, and nothing will change about that. They'll just lower their prices. Instead of getting a really ungodly amount of profit, they'll lower it down to an ungodly amount of profit. This won't change anything. This won't make the state safer. And this is not a bill about legalization. It's a bill about taxation. It's, it really won't change anything. We have marijuana gummies right now that are legal. I was in a committee last week that some of you were on, and the testimony was that from one of the other representatives that, for all intents and purposes, marijuana is available to anyone right now. To me, it's the equivalent of the fireworks ban. We're fixing a problem that doesn't need to be fixed, and it's only going to make things worse. A couple years from now, people will be coming into committees talking about how legalized marijuana made a difference in their life, and I can't have that on my conscience. I will also be a no, and I'll stay a no. Thank you.
Thank you. Closing comments, Representative Stephenson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members, for the good discussion today. I did just want to speak about a couple things. One is I think there's an interesting tension in some of the arguments that we hear from people who are opposed to this bill. We hear on the one hand, well, this doesn't change anything because we already have these cannabis, these THC gummies. They're actually not cannabis gummies, but THC gummies that are widely available. They're everywhere, and why can't we just, expunge and move on? And then on the other hand, we hear sometimes from the same people of all the calamities that will happen if cannabis is legalized. And I think that there's an obvious tension between those two positions. I think that what should be clear to everyone is that our current system is the one that is totally broken, the one that is the least desirable and is not working. It's not achieving the goals that we want it to. If it was going to, it would have done so many, many years ago. So we need to try something new. And I do think that this bill takes an important step towards trying to get rid of that illicit marketplace. That is something that is important to me. And different states have had different levels of success. It is true that in some states, it has not made the problem better, and in some cases has made the problem worse. And I am trying to learn from the mistakes made in those states. We're going to find entirely new mistakes to make here in Minnesota. That is my goal. I do not want to make the same mistakes that were made in other states. But I will just note that we do have some experience moving from an illicit marketplace into a legitimate marketplace with a controlled substance. 100 years ago, there was an illicit marketplace for alcohol. Today, there is not. It doesn't exist anymore. So I reject the defeatism of we can't get rid of the illicit marketplace. We have been successful in doing that. The last thing I'll just say, I appreciate very genuinely from both sides the comments about the process that I've undertaken and the approach, and I'm really committed to that and to taking on suggestions. I think we've taken 8 or 9 Republican amendments so far directly, and then way more where, like the 3 today that I said, well, let's work on it and I'll do something down the road in an author's amendment. So if you count all of those, we are well beyond 8 or 9. I'm really committed to that. But the reason why I wanted to mention all this is it's nice that you were directing those words to me, but I also want to take a moment because you get to see Ben Johnson every day in this committee, and what an unbelievable treasure Ben Johnson is. The work that he's doing for us all is just incredible. So I'll leave it with thanking Ben Johnson.
All right, and with that, I will renew my motion and re-refer House File 100 as amended to the Committee on Economic Development, Finance, and Policy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The motion prevails, and I just want to thank all the members and all the staff, members of the public for coming back. Really appreciate everybody's ability to come back today, and with that, we are adjourned.